Trigger warning to our viewers. This is a very sensitive topic that we're going to be discussing about assisted dying and also suicide ideation. So let's just go into the story. Cindy has it. Cindy?
Yeah, today we're going to delve into this very sensitive topic, the legalization of assisted dying. Several parts of the UK are currently considering changes to their laws to allow terminally ill individuals to end their lives with medical assistance. So this issue is very complex and varies significantly across different regions. I come from a country where euthanasia is legal, and so we are going to examine the experiences of other countries who have legalized such practices and see what we can learn from that and how it can be applied to the US.
Well, Cindy, this article actually discusses terms like assisted dying and assisted suicide and euthanasia. So, how important is it for lawmakers and the public to have clear definitions of these terms when considering changes to the laws regarding the end of life choices?
It's like in every discussion, if you don't know what you're talking about, you're going nowhere. So, and especially in a topic that's very polarizing, there is a lot of disinformation, a lot of misinformation, and so if you want to have a real debate on this, you need to learn the difference. And the article explains them pretty well. So, like I said, I live in one of the three countries where euthanasia is available who, and I quote, are not terminally ill. We can talk about this specific point later, but here's how I see it. Allowing euthanasia with guardrails, very important, is a matter of compassion from the society to the individual, and also from the individual to the society. Because it's important to live in a society that allows you to have full bodily autonomy. And I know that in the US it's quite the question right now. But this is part of it. It's deciding what to do with your own body. It's also about offering humans courtesy we currently have no issue offering to our pets, which is insane when you think about it. And what's even more insane and extremely hypocritical is that in the US, many people are in favor of the state deciding to take someone's life against their will, but not the state allowing someone to die on their own free will. So that's just insane to me. But from the individual's perspective, it's about having a sense of control over your life, because when you're suffering from a terminal disease, you lose a lot of control. You have to go to doctors, you have to follow treatments, you lose the ability to do whatever you used to do before. And having the ability to choose how you end your life, it gives you back part of this sense of control. And I think that's important. It's also deciding when you've had enough suffering, because that's just the basic. It's okay, I'm done. I just can't fight anymore. It's also about deciding to live on your own terms, surrounded by your loved ones, because we know that the alternative, suicide, is usually extremely lonely, and I think it's better for a society to allow their people to go away surrounded by their loved ones. But what is the most important to me, it's the idea that suicide generates a lot of guilt in people around you, because it's often very sudden. Usually, people hide it, those ideations, and so when it happens, people say, "Oh man, what could I have done differently?" And those questions, they turn around, and it's extremely heavy for the people around you. And so having this time to say, okay, look, people, I'm going to do this. I'm going to live on my own terms, and this is the reason why. Then you don't alleviate the pain of you living, but you can alleviate the guilt. And I think that's extremely important for a society to allow this.
That you bring up a couple of interesting points. Like one concerning like if we have a pet who happens to have a terminal illness that can't be treated, euthanasia is perfectly fine. However, when we're discussing, human beings who want to, end their life because they are, being afflicted and their quality of life has severely diminished, then it becomes a philosophical topic of for debate. And it's kind of interesting to like really look at end of life choices and also combine it with the conversation about bodily autonomy. Like, when is it okay for an individual to say that this is something that I want to do versus outside individuals saying that, oh, if they happen to want to do this, then they are suffering from some type of behavioral health issue, right? Um, but Infidel, I have a question. I want to come to you because concerns have actually been raised about the potential impact of legalizing assisted dying on vulnerable populations, such as people with disabilities or mental illness. So, how can legislation be crafted to address these concerns and ensure adequate protections are for these groups?
I feel like I'm going to be speaking out of both sides of my mouth here because
Mm.
while I do believe in body autonomy, I also understand that we need to make sure that we're safeguarding people from making decisions that even they themselves wouldn't make in different situations. And so there does need to be a process, as I believe Cindy put it, safeguard or guardrails, and that process needs to take in some things about cognitive abilities, because as I did some research on this, they say that 23% of the people who requested assisted death had psychiatric symptoms that decreased their competence. Now,
Mm.
out of those that were not competent, two of the five have been judged completely competent by their primary physician. So it definitely is going to take more than just the primary physician or someone saying, yeah, they know what they're doing, they know what they want, so we can go ahead and move forward. So yes, I do believe there's a process, and that is a little uncomfortable to say because I also want to feel that we have that body autonomy. But I've known multiple cases of people getting a certain medication and they're convinced that people are out to kill them, or people are trying to drown them, or all kind of crazy things. And then all they do is they change their medicine, and guess what? They realize, oh, that was just in my head. So I think there
Mm.
does need to be some type of oversight, but that oversight is definitely something that we need to be careful about, but we do need to have a path for that to be open. And one thing I just wanted to say is that if there is anyone who has any thoughts of suicide, just call 988. It is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline.
Indeed, yes. Yeah, we have those safeguards that's available right now for people who may be experiencing suicidal ideation, like 988. And I definitely always encourage people, like, if you happen to have these ideations, to please talk to someone. Don't just, just jump the gun and then all of a sudden just like unalive yourself. When there could be other, alternatives that can make something better, right? But, but we're really talking about, in this particular case, talking about assisted dying or having the decision to have control over when your life stops, and how that coincides with body autonomy. And Kelly, one of the arguments in favor of assisted dying is that it allows individuals to exercise this autonomy, and that control over their life ending decisions belongs to them and them alone. So, I guess like I kind of want you to tack on a little bit about your thoughts about if you had the capacity to construct legislation that makes sense, in order to make sure these particular goals are achieved, in your opinion, what would that look like to you?
I think everybody should have complete autonomy over their body totally. Like, I don't even believe we should force people to have vaccinations. That doesn't mean I don't get them. I do. I get all my vaccinations, but I don't think we should force people to get them. I do believe that if you don't want to get vaccinations, you maybe need to be isolated from the rest of our society. We can put everybody who doesn't want to get vaccination in Wyoming, say, right? But because they're endangering the rest of us. But I don't think we should force anybody to do something like that. So I want to go back to something Cindy said, and I think it's really important that we have these conversations publicly, because when we don't have these, we don't talk about these things, it often is something that people will not discuss with the people around them, their loved ones around them, the people are important to them. And then I'm having a little bit of a rough time. I didn't think I was going to. I just lost his friend recently, not that long ago, to this, and he was in a lot of pain. He had some other problems that life was kind of handed him at the time, and I don't blame him for doing what he did, because I know he was in a lot of pain and he wasn't getting any relief for it. But it came as such a shock to all of us. And like Cindy, like you said, we were all left wondering, well, what could we have done? And honestly, there's probably nothing any of us could done. But if he had talked it over with us, if he had let us know what he was going to do, I think we would have been able to accept it a lot better. So I think it's really, really important to have these conversations publicly, so that the people who get left behind are able to accept it better, so that we can understand that it wasn't us, that it wasn't something out of something that we could have done something about, that this is something that was a good decision. My friend was not a very dumb person. He was not in any emotional stress. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time, but
No,
yeah, I
you're
think we do
good.
need to make it more public so that people can have these conversations, so we're not stuck with these bad feelings afterwards, because it's not right the way these things have to happen now today in the United States.
Yeah, you brought up a point, Kelly, when you were talking about your friend and his decision to, unalive himself because of the health issues that he was experiencing at the time. And being a person that has taken care of a parent, and kind of working with another parent that's dealing with chronic issues, with their health, um, I think back to years ago when I was taking care of my dad, and he ended up, succumbing to stage 4 cancer, and metastasized by the time that we found out that what it was. And everything was about at that particular time just basically keeping him as comfortable as possible, even though that by that time the cancer spread to his bones and he was in pain a lot, you know. And reflecting on that time, even though that was like at least about like 10, 11 years ago, I think back to myself, if assisted dying or unaliving oneself was not so stigmatized in our society, would it be an easier conversation for us to really have, especially when we are dealing with loved ones who are dealing with, um, illnesses that, you know, they can't come back from, right? We don't have the means to bring them back, to a point where they were previously, as being, fully ambulated, not in pain, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm wondering to myself, because like I'm thinking, and this is me just putting myself out here, that 10, 15 years ago, if my dad had that ideation to me saying that I'm in pain too much, I want I want to be done with all of this, I may have tried to talk about it, and I may be more so, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, that would have been more of my selfishness, not necessarily wanting to lose my dad. And also at the time I was a Christian, so I would have been concerned about what happened to his immortal soul. Now, of course, like I'm older and I'm in a different place in my life, so of course I don't think that way. But I'm thinking to myself that possibly this could be an issue that other people who may be around people who are dealing with chronic illnesses that are terminal. Um, their health has been completely compromised, that this could be an issue for the people that happen to be around them, to the point where they are concerned about these different things that come up with mostly belief systems. Um, but, Cindy, you live in a country where assisted dying is legal. And, the article actually discusses these things. So, is there, in your particular experience, or even like, because you are in a country where this is considered, par for the course, where, people who happen to be on the other side of the spectrum happen to be in a person's life where they have made the decision, how are they coping with it? Or how can they allow, you know, trying to get my thoughts together. How can they kind of allow themselves not to fall into that whole hole with saying, what could I have done in order for this person not to make that decision?
So first of all, in Belgium, euthanasia is legal since 2003. There is an independent commission that produces a report every year, and there's an English version you can find easily online. And so it gives you a lot of numbers. We know that 60% of the people who request this procedure do it because of cancer. 0.9% of the procedures are related to depression and mental disease like this. So the guardrails are very strong in my opinion, because you can only request it for yourself. You have to convince two separate doctors specialized in your line of problem to validate it. There needs to be at least 1 month between the request and the act, and it usually takes between 6 months to a year. There is a legal component also, to make sure that you're not trying to avoid any punishment for a crime or something like that. So because of those guardrails, and because it's been in place for so long, it's completely, well, it's mostly accepted. Like if you say, I made that choice because I can't suffer anymore, then people tend to say, okay, how can I help? How it's not, as you said earlier, it's not like, yeah, please don't do that, please don't do that. Of course, you will have people who will understand that, but because the discussion happens so freely right now, people understand it much more, why people can go through this and request it for themselves. So yeah, so I grew up in France and lived there until I was 36, and France is definitely not ready for that. whereas Belgium has adopted this, and France and Belgium are neighbor countries. And so, yeah, 21 years, and it's completely accepted by the people, and no one is talking about changing the law. In fact, it's been extended to children, like 5 or 6 years ago, under very, very strict guardrails too. I think there's been only one case in the last 2 or 3 years. So the slippery slope argument, I think, if you look at how it goes in Belgium, it's just nonsense. It just doesn't happen because of the protection.
Well, to just to round out this whole conversation, I'm going to give the last word to Infidel and Kelly. I am not so sure that the United States is ready, but I think it's definitely a conversation that should be had. So, Kelly and Infidel, if we were to really have a serious conversation to have like assisted dying being a part of like a federal legislation, because there are some states that do allow this. How do you think it should go to the point where we can get to over that hump to say that this is something that should be more widely accepted, especially for people who are able to make that decision to have autonomy over their life? And Phil, I want to start with you and then Kelly.
I have to say that for me, it starts with the fact that having been in a situation where I was making that determination of when I was going to do this, because my entire family knows that when that time comes, if I'm physically capable, that's the choice I'm going to make. And I'm not going to lay it on them. I'm going to lay it out as what it is, an opportunity to say, hey, I love you guys. It's been a good run. It's time to make a decision. That's not necessarily the easiest decision for the person making it or the person who's on the other end who's going to have to survive and live with the consequences. But as I said, I was at a point where I was thinking maybe I had 90 days left. Fortunately, that was about 2.5 years ago, and I'm not there now, but I know that decision is still going to come up on me at some point. And I think that the most important thing is to make sure that you communicate not just with your family, but with the other people you know, because that's the starting of normalization. That's the starting of people being aware that, that's an option, because a lot of people don't realize, they really don't, that you can say, you know what, enough's enough. And with or without the law, we have these determinations now. And as you said, we have some places in this country where we do have options available. So I think that once again, it's about what we're doing here. And that's having conversations with people here, having them in real life when we talk to people, and making them understand that this is something that's normal, that's acceptable. That's not something we have to talk about in hushed voices behind closed doors.
Yeah, it's a conversation my son and I have had. It may be in my future as well. So I have two conditions that are very painful, and they're just getting more painful as I get older. And one of them is probably going to kill me eventually anyway. So yeah, it's a conversation I've had with my son. I've let him know how I feel about it. He understands it. I've not only talked about it, I know exactly how I'm going to do it when it comes to be that time. So yeah, it's just, and being able to have that conversation with my son, I think won't put him into the position where he's going to feel guilty. So yeah, I think normalization is right. You're right. We have to make it normal. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen within the next few years, but eventually it will. Yeah. One of the fortunate things is that the people who really make that kind of rational decision and feel that that's what they need to do are able to do it, even though it might not be legal. It's still, if it comes down to it, the possibility is at least there if you need it. So, and I would hope that if anybody's thinking about this, you talk to somebody first. Don't just make that snap decision. Yeah. This is not something that you just think about. It's in a in a couple of days. Even it's something that you think. I've been thinking about it for 20 years. So
Yeah, this is decades in the making for me
yeah,
as well.
right, exactly. It's not a decision I would take lightly at all.
I know that part of my conversations with my clients is this, because the majority of my clients that I work with are older. They live with chronic conditions, and sometimes those chronic conditions can, flare up into something else. So having those directives about what do you want to happen when something like this arises is important, and to actually have that in written form so that your decisions that you make are honored. And I think that this whole conversation about assisted dying and being able to have that decision making process over your own life should be grounded in rationality, but also compassion, and also committing to upholding human dignity and autonomy. And while also addressing potential risk and challenges through careful consideration and also evidence based policy. And what we would also like for you to do, dear viewer, is look more at our evidence based talking points and other things of that nature by clicking here for more nonprofits.